Raider Nation, what is up? Great to be back here with you on the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast for another episode this week alongside Bucky Brooks. I am Rhett Lewis. I'm excited to be here with you in our final episode before we get to draft month. Bucky, before it really, for lack of a better term, starts getting real. And we're going to be getting into the 20s in terms of days until kicking things off from Detroit at the end of April. So, Bucky, let's kind of kick this thing off today before we get into the rest of the content for the episode. Where are teams at right now? What's going on in the draft room with Tom Telesco and company at this moment? You've got the top 30 visits going on. Pro days are still kind of happening. How would you kind of describe where we are in the process?
Yeah, so we're nearing the end of the process. And as you described it, that's where we're at. So we're at the end of the pro day season. So all of your area scouts are still going out on the road, still going to pro days, collecting the last little bits of background information, athletic testing, measurements and numbers. Coaches are on the road doing some of these individual workouts, just trying to finalize the overall profile of every player that's on the board. And simultaneously, you have Tom Telesco and the staff entertaining guys on their top 30 visits. So, coaches are going in and out, but you have the head coach, the coordinators, the position coach there to meet the individuals that come in for those visits. And what that gives you is a full 24 hours to really get to know the prospects. You not only have an opportunity to have a dinner with them, so now from a character assessment, you're able to kind of get a feel for how they are, how they fit in. You get to have a relaxed interview, basically, an interaction where you kind of get a chance to see them kind of relax and not be a kind of stuffy like they would be at the combine. And then you have an opportunity to bring them to the office the next day and go over some X and O stuff, have them walk around the building, have everyone kind of give you an opinion on how they believe that they would fit into the fabric of the team. So those top 30 visits are really about trying to imagine, can this player really play for us based on the interactions, the conversations, and the intellectual exchanges that you have with the film session and on the X and O board.
I'm glad you brought that up. In terms of the holistic approach of a 30 visit, because the feedback you get from beyond the football and beyond the scouts and beyond the analysis and beyond the reports that get filled out on each player, I think is really valuable. You might get a chance to put this player, this prospect in front of different departments, from the receptionist who opens, who's the first person to greet them when they walk in the building to, maybe they're having lunch with your team development staff. What does the athletic training staff say about the way that they interact, the way that, that they approach the support staff, all that stuff. I think, you then begin to get a feel about how a player really fits in, because we talk about fit a lot from a football perspective. But fit from a franchise perspective is important too, because, if you find out a guy is like, didn't know who this person was, didn't treat him very well because he didn't think he was important, that starts to tell you a little bit of something about how they might fit into the locker room too.
Yes, a real character assessment. It may be from anyone, the custodial staff.
Sure.
Being able to ask them, hey, how did they leave things when they left? Did they pick up the trash? Did they put it in the trash can, or did they just kind of leave it for someone else to do it? How did they treat the receptionist when they came into the building? Were they kind? Were they considerate? Were they
friendly? It's like a real job interview.
It's all that. And I think prospects have to know you're being evaluated from the time you step off the plane and the time you are greeted by Raiders personnel. It is on. Everything that you do, how you interact, how you treat them, how you talk, how you walk, all of that stuff is being assessed. And when you depart and go back on the plane to your respective city, the entire staff is going to come together and they're going to have a conversation about the guys that we're visiting. Do we like him? Is he a Raider? Does he fit? How is he? What are the concerns? What are the best parts of what we discovered on this visit? So it's really important, because you got to remember, scouts only have a handful of interactions with a prospect before they make multi-million-dollar decisions. If you're selected to come in on the top 30, it means the team is very serious about you, and they're paying very, very close attention to how you engage with anyone in the building.
Yeah, and look, the scouts are also getting a lot of that same information from people on the ground at their respective schools, right? They're asking the trainers and the equipment managers and the strength staff and the position coaches and other coaches on the staff, hey, what'd you think about this guy? And so man, it is a lot of data that comes in on each prospect, just to kind of give everybody some context on that, man. It's not just, hey, what's your 40? And, were you a champion? Did you play well? I mean, like, there's so much money involved. There's so much investment involved. And thus you want to get every piece of information you can. Pro days are a big part of that information. And I want to dig into that. Want to let you know, we're also on today's episode going to put through a little mock draft, a little Raiders-centric mock draft scenario here. We're going to go through the first 13 picks and end with the Raiders on the clock at 13 and see what's left. Might do this a couple of different times as we continue to get closer to Detroit at the end of April and kind of see how many different scenarios and how many different, rumors, reports, and all that stuff kind of influence the way that we're talking about these players and these fits in different positions. So we'll get to that here in just a moment. But let's dig back in on the pro day circuit, because last we left you, we talked a little bit about Caleb Williams, talked about Bo Nix, talked about some of the other players that had been through the early portion of pro day season. Big one happened kind of before, end of last week. And it's probably the player that's maybe the buzziest dude out there right now, and that's Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Had his pro day, was dressed all in white, and it was it was like the angel of throwing sessions was out there in Ann Arbor with his former head coach, now the head coach of the LA Chargers, in attendance. And I just want to read this to you, Buck, because this is what Jim Harbaugh had to say about J.J. McCarthy, who, by the way, before this pro day had said that J.J. should be the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he's got Justin Herbert. He doesn't have to worry about it. Right. Okay. But so it's easy for him to say all this stuff when he knows the Chargers aren't picking a quarterback here. But here's what he said. So let's see. He said, the workout JJ had, I mean, I've been to a lot of pro days and watched quarterbacks throw. That was the best I've ever seen a quarterback throw it in a pro day. Not only were his feet great in the individual drills, then he started throwing. Every throw was right there. The receivers did a great job too. There were coaches and GMs that were coming up to me saying, great job. It's like I predicted. Once they were around him, I've been hearing stories about where he is on the board, the little things, the intangibles. It was absolutely no surprise whatsoever. There was raving, and it was great to hear. I know it was sincere. It's unsolicited, but it's numerous GMs, numerous head coaches. So the praise is aplenty, and it is thick from Jim Harbaugh on his former quarterback, as you might expect. So let's first start, because we'll get to the report that's out there now from our buddy Tom Pelissero over at NFL Network. But what does that tell you? Like, is he laying it on a little bit extra, or do you think that is really starting to kind of be the conversation that's surrounding J.J. McCarthy?
I think that's some of the conversation that's really surrounding J.J. McCarthy. I think everyone has to understand Jim Harbaugh, who got his coaching start with the Raiders back when they were Oakland under Mr. Davis, played in the league for a long time, is one of the best quarterback developers that we've seen. Look at Andrew Luck. Look at the work that he did with Alex Smith. Look at the work that he did with Colin Kaepernick, and now J.J. McCarthy. This guy knows quarterbacks. And anytime you have a respected developer, heap praise on J.J. McCarthy, I think is more than just him making sure that his kid gets kind of like the best report that he can get from his alma mater. I think this is Jim Harbaugh understanding how tough J.J. McCarthy is, the intangible that he brings to the table, how he worked through a very competitive quarterback situation to become the starter, how he led Michigan to the national title and a college football playoff berth the year before, and finished with a record of 27-1 while checking his ego at the door to be the quarterback of a run-first team. I think that part is underappreciated in the process. Remember, this guy, like most quarterbacks, they want to throw the ball all over the yard. The fact that he picked Michigan, the fact that he was willing to kind of take a secondary role for a team that was a run-first team, to me suggests that he not only is made of the right stuff, but the only thing that really matters to J.J. McCarthy is winning. To me, that is everything. And I think what Jim Harbaugh is doing is making sure everyone understands that this quarterback knows, look, the main thing is the main thing, and that's winning.
Yeah. And look, again, there's high-level stuff on J.J. McCarthy's tape. There's high-level traits out there. It's just the volume of it is less than some of the other players and the other quarterbacks, at least in my opinion, in this draft. And again, that goes back to what you're talking about, checking your ego at the door, understanding, hey, I'm a 5-star dude, but there's 5-star dudes all over this roster. And for us to win a national title, this is the way that it's going to have to be. And that's what he bought into. And that's what that team bought into. And so I can appreciate that. And I'm sure NFL teams can appreciate that. Hey, this dude's got the skills to make us tailor the offense around him. But if we need to morph this thing into something that's a little bit more run heavy or what, we can do that. And he's going to be fine with it. He's got that in his bag. So, I do think all that's interesting. Then you get today in this week at the NFL annual league meeting, where all the league owners, GMs, and coaches congregating, and the report from our buddy Tom Pelissero was that he's heard multiple GMs talking to him about what the Commanders are going to do at number 2 with a first-year GM and Adam Peters, first-year head coach there, brand new regime with the Commanders, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters together. They need a quarterback. It's obvious. They traded Sam Howell. And so there's reports out that and Tom's saying that most GMs believe that Peters is actually going to select J.J. McCarthy instead of Drake May or Jaden Daniels. So when you hear that, does that sound like disinformation? Does that sound like, hey, people are reading the tea leaves? And again, J.J. McCarthy did meet with the Commanders. That was another report at the Pro Day. It was one of the couple of teams that were there, and he ended up meeting with. How do you kind of parse through all that? What kind of sense do you make out of that?
Look, I think there's a lot of buzz around J.J. McCarthy because of the intangibles that he brings to the position. And the more people get around him, the more that they may be falling in love with the personality, the core traits that you need to be successful to be a quarterback outside of the physical stuff. It's a leadership position. It is one that you have to touch every part of the team because you are viewed as the leader when you step into the building. J.J. McCarthy appears to have all of that stuff. I think it's important that he references we a lot, not necessarily me, when he talks about his experience at Michigan and those things. For the Washington Commanders, I think they're trying to find the right fit for them. And while it is important that a guy has the prototypical size and dimensions and those things, you also got to have the right stuff. J.J. McCarthy appears to have that. Not saying that Jaden Daniels and Drake May don't have it, but I believe the more people investigate McCarthy, the more they're beginning to find out that he has like those blue chip qualities that you normally want in a QB1.
Yeah, I just think I think that's really interesting because a lot of the latest scenarios that we've been talking about were, all right, Caleb's going 1 to the Bears. Certainly now they traded Justin Fields. Then you'll have some combination of Drake May and Jaden Daniels going 2 and 3. And then maybe it's the Vikings who acquired the 23rd overall pick in addition to their original pick at 11. We all kind of assumed it was to move up for a quarterback, certainly after Kirk Cousins hightailed it out of there, went to Atlanta. And that they try to move up to 4 or 5 to get that 4th quarterback, and that was going to be J.J. McCarthy. So if McCarthy goes at 2, does that change the calculus for the Vikings, or do you think they'd be equally as happy to trade those 2 picks to move up and get whichever the 4th quarterback is, May or Daniels, in this scenario?
Look, I think in all of these scenarios, people will say, hey, I'm pretty comfortable with any 2 of the 3 quarterbacks they may fall to them. But everyone has a preference, though. And for the Minnesota Vikings and for some of the teams that are outside the top 4, that's going to be the real conversation. Because as you know, if something, I would say, unexpected happens, it leaves players available that you don't foresee being there, not only when it comes to the quarterbacks, but other skill position guys. This is one where the Minnesota Vikings, they have to figure out, hey, who's our guy? And how aggressive do we want to be in trying to make a play to get up in range to get the guy that we designate as this is the guy that we want to be the Vikings quarterback of the future. That's what, Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, that's what they have to get. They have to kind of scrimmage around, and they have to be willing to part with the picks to make it happen.
It feels like, Jaden Daniels is maybe more of a match in play style to what J.J. McCarthy can bring. They have, look, Jaden's hard to match with anybody. His athletic traits are by far, far and away the best of this class in terms of quarterbacks. But yeah, I don't know. I would assume if they were comfortable with McCarthy that they find a way to get comfortable with May and Daniels would be my guess. But we'll see. That's kind of part of what's fun about this time of year and kind of laying all these scenarios out. So with that in mind, like you think about that. So you get, let's say whether the, Vikings trade up to 4 with the, why is my blanking on this
11,
trade up, trade up
11, 11,
11 and 23,
23.
trade up to 4 with the Cardinals or 5 with the Jets. You're going to get 4 quarterbacks in the top 5 picks is what it feels like, which means the best skill players, the best O-linemen, the best edge rush, all those guys just continue to get pushed down. So if you're one of those teams at the bottom of the top 10 or in the early part of the teens, you're feeling pretty good about this. If you don't need a quarterback, which again, is an interesting part of this. So let's do this. Let's get a first round mock draft. I'm going to have you take the odds. So you're going to start us off at number 1. I'll go with the evens, and I'll put us on the clock, and then we'll both make a pick, seeing what's left over for the Raiders at 13. Okay, buddy. So, Buck, you have got the Bears on the clock at number 1 overall. Are you going to shock the world, or where are you going?
No, it's like, look, they've already tipped their hand. If this is Vegas, they're in the casino. Like, they've already shown what they have. So let's go. Caleb Williams going to the Chicago Bears at number 1. It's been expected. It's been talked about for about a year, and so now it happens. Caleb Williams comes off the board to the Bears.
Yeah, and we were both watching the Caleb Williams Pro Day. Again, as our buddy DJ called it, a proof of life Pro Day. He's there. He's got the arm. He's got that talent. It's all there. All the wow stuff you want to see is available for you on his tape. Now it's about making sure it's a fit, and it sure seems like it's going to be. Let's move to the Commanders at number 2. Well, we were just talking about it, so let's play into the recency of the reports. And in this scenario, I am going to give the Washington Commanders and new GM Adam Peters, new head coach Dan Quinn, and new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury a quarterback like we all expect, but I'm going to give him J.J. McCarthy. I'm going to give him the guy who's got a little bit of that athleticism to move around outside the pocket, to make some of those kind of creative off-schedule plays, but also the ability at, with a nice frame, to stand in the pocket and make tight window throws, which I've seen with my own 2 eyes live and in person. And let's see how that plays out with Terry McLaurin and with Jahan Dotson and that crew. So the Commanders are going to take J.J. McCarthy, which is going to put you back on the clock here at number 3 with Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf, and the New England Patriots.
Yeah, so in thinking about the New England Patriots, you have to understand Elliott Wolf is the son of Ron Wolf, who also spent a lot of time with the Silver and Black, working under Al Davis. And the one thing that we know and appreciate is they value traits. They value prototypical players who have the prototypical dimensions that play well in the league. Because of that, Drake May is the pick for the Patriots at number 3, 6'4", 230 or so pounds, athletic, will remind a lot of Patriots fans of what they see 2 times a year in Josh Allen. He is the pick for the Patriots at number 3.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to pull off a trade because the Vikings have got to do it, Bucky. They didn't just acquire the 23rd pick just to acquire the 23rd pick. They did it as fuel, right? They did it as ammunition. So they're going to package 11 and 23 and some sugar down the road, maybe a pick swap later in the draft, or maybe a future consideration. And they're going to move up to number 4 with the Arizona Cardinals, which, by the way, is going to give the Cardinals 3 first-round draft picks here. And we'll get to that in a moment. But the Vikings are going to move up to number 4, and they're going to say, fine, you guys are going to give us Jaden Daniels. We're going to take Jaden Daniels, and we're going to take him to an NFC North title and maybe even an NFC Championship game appearance. Maybe not in his rookie year. But they're going to take the quarterback. So we're going to get quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, 4. Williams to the Bears, McCarthy to the Commanders, May to the Patriots, and Jaden Daniels to the Minnesota Vikings at number 4. All right, so that puts the Jets on the clock at 5. The Chargers. The Chargers on the clock at 5. So I've just been assuming the Jets are going to trade up to 5, but the Chargers on the clock at 5. What makes sense there?
Oh, what makes sense will be what will make Chargers fans mad, and that would be an offensive tackle. And so the best offensive tackle is available in Joe Alt from Notre Dame. You then begin to show the commitment that they want to have to toughness and the running game. Joe Alt playing Notre Dame, very balanced, very skillful player, has some nastiness in his finish. He brings some violence to that offensive line and helps Jim Harbaugh kind of jumpstart his program by making sure everyone understands We're about toughness and running the football, not necessarily about the splash of having a pass catcher on the perimeter.
No kidding. With all of them still available. So you're going to take Joe Alt over Marvin Harrison?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So the Chargers have our first O lineman. It's Joe Alt off the board at number 5, which is going to bring the New York Giants up at number 6. And they are sprinting to the podium or sprinting to the phones to call whoever is making that declaration to the league office to say, we are going to take Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver from Ohio State, guy we've been talking about as the top dude in this class for about as long as we've been talking about Caleb Williams as the top dude at quarterback. So the Giants, in desperate need for some help on the perimeter, go and get the best guy out there. He falls to them at number 6, Marvin Harrison to the Giants, Bucky, which then brings up the Titans, who are a little upset that you took Joe Alt at 5, but here they sit at number 7.
Yeah, so the Tennessee Titans have really gone all out to make sure that their young quarterback is successful. And so there are a few different ways that we can look at it. We could think about adding a Malik Neighbors to put him on the perimeter with Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, respectively, which would be great for Will Levis. Or we can make sure that Will Levis doesn't get hit, and we take a guy like a Olu Fashanu from Penn State. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the left tackle prospect. We can put him in front of Will Levis, and we're going to say, I know we need a pass catcher, but we can go and get a pass catcher later. Right now, it's really important that our quarterback avoids taking a pounding in the pocket.
This is an interesting scenario, right? Because we know there's going to be a ton of tackles coming off the board, but we get 2 in the first 7 picks, which is an interesting part of the scenario. So quarterbacks goes Caleb Williams to the Bears. It goes J.J. McCarthy to the Commanders. We go Drake May to the Patriots. We go Jaden Daniels to the Vikings, who traded up to number 4. We go with Joe Alt to the Chargers at 5. Marvin Harrison available for the Giants to take at 6. The Titans take Olu Fashanu at number 7, which means at number 8, the Atlanta Falcons are on the board. Boy, are they going to be tempted to take another receiver, another skill player in the top 10 with Malik Neighbors and with Rome Odunze sitting there at 8. Ultimately, I think that they have to like what they already have there. They acquired Rondell Moore. They've got Drake London. They've got Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Kirk Cousins. It feels like enough. Maybe it never is enough, but I think you've got an opportunity to take the best defensive player on the board here. And on my board, that's going to be Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama. So I'm going to go with Dallas Turner to the Atlanta Falcons, giving them the edge presence. Again, that is a blue player at a blue position. So premier player to premier position for the Falcons, which they desperately need. Give me Dallas Turner there in Atlanta, which then puts you back on the board here, Bucky Brooks.
Yeah, so I'm back with the Chicago Bears. I'm Ryan Poles, and I'm just running around the office because I'm giddy. I don't even know what to do. Here I have. I got
both the wideouts.
I got my franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams, and I have an opportunity to pick and choose who do I want to put around Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. When I think about Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and how rugged they are and how physical they are, to me, it just leads me to believe that Rome Odunze would be a part of that. High IQ player, guy that has interchangeability, being able to move around to multiple spots. I think that's the pick. I think they're going to go with the physical presence to kind of change the temperament of their wide receiver room. Rome Odunze is the pick at 9.
Okay, so Malik Neighbors is still on the board as we approach pick number 10. All right, so I'm going to recap the upcoming picks here for you since we did have a trade. So at 10, we've got the New York Jets on the clock. Then at 11, we've got the Arizona Cardinals sitting there, fingers crossed, hoping that Malik Neighbors is still there and they didn't waste an opportunity to get one of the top 3 wide receivers by trading out of that number 4 spot. So it'll go Arizona Cardinals at 11. It'll go the Denver Broncos at 12, and then we'll both make a pick for these Las Vegas Raiders at number 13. So I'm on the clock at number 10 with the Jets. Signed Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. So they've got tackle holes filled, but these are aging veterans who have shown the propensity to miss some time. Man, they went and got Mike Williams. So the need isn't necessarily glaring at wide receiver. Although with Malik Neighbors there, does that change the calculus? Or do they still feel comfortable going to get a Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State, who I've used the 3rd best tackle in this draft, and giving yourself an opportunity, maybe plug him in at guard to help get your best 5 out there. And then if, you need him at one of the 2 tackle spots, you've got that opportunity. Gosh, I just think knowing what Aaron Rodgers has done and knowing, where he is and perhaps the vulnerability and durability at his age, I just don't think you can pass up on a tackle at this point. So the Jets are going to take Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State at number 10, and we get 3 tackles off in the top 10, which then puts the Arizona Cardinals, Bucky, on the board for you at 11.
See how well that worked out? I'm able to get an extra first-round pick. And even though I didn't get the number 1 receiver on the board, I get the number 3 receiver. And some would say that he's number 1 on
He is
most
the number
boards.
1. Yeah.
So Malik Neighbors being available right there at 11.
Incredible.
Look, Monty Ossenfort is ecstatic. They hand in the card in 2 minutes, and the Cardinals now have a new number 1 receiver.
Okay, and so that leaves the Broncos here at number 12. 3 tackles have gone off the board. We haven't seen a corner come off the board yet, which is possible. Maybe not here. They've got Pat Surtain. But quarterback. Kind of keep coming back to it here with the Broncos. How do they move forward with Jarrett Stidham?
Oh, you mean Jarrett Stidham later of the Raiders, like who had a nice little run for the Raiders for a minute? That's what Sean Payton is. He's putting all the eggs.
Stidham's the closer. He's the season closer, right? Did it for the Raiders, a couple years ago, and last year Derek Carr did it for the Broncos last year, replacing Russell Wilson. But I just don't know that they're going to walk into this season with Jarrett Stidham as the starter without a plan for the future. I feel like we're going Bo Nix here. I feel like we're going Bo Nix here. We're going Bo Nix to Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos at number 12, which means we've got 5 quarterbacks off the board in the first 12. And so the Raiders are on the clock with really their pick of the litter on the defensive side of the ball outside of Dallas Turner. Leatu Latu is available if you want to go get an edge rusher. Jared Verse still available. Byron Murphy still available on the interior. Although, you think about Christian Wilkins, did that kind of solve that need? You've got the best corners. Terry and Arnold, Quinion Mitchell are still out there. Definitely a need there.
I think, so here we are sitting at 13. We're scrimmaging it out. Took a pass rusher last year, remember? Yeah. Tyree Wilson coming off the board. Tyree Wilson coming off the board. There we have Max Crosby.
We feel good about the edge. Yep.
Yeah, we feel good about Christian Wilkins coming in. And so the area of weakness is in the secondary. So now we have to make a decision. Which cornerback do we like? Do we like Terry and Arnold, who is safe and solid, not flashy, just does it? Or are we willing to go for the traits guy, which would be Quinion Mitchell?
Yes.
And I just think about the Raiders and I think about what they've traditionally done. Yep. Quinion Mitchell is the pick. And so here you are, you take the smaller school standout guy coming from the MAC who played really well during the regular season, dominated the Senior Bowl, crushed it at the Combine.
Yeah.
If you're Tom Telesco, I think it's an easy pick. I think Quinion Mitchell is the guy at 13.
Unless you've had your eye on a quarterback this whole process.
We're going to take 6 quarterbacks in the first 13
We're going to take 6 quarterbacks in the first 13. Well, look, you already gave the scenario as the corner, so I'm not going to double down on that. I mean, it's like I don't think we're going to take a linebacker here at 13. I mean, I guess it's possible that a player like, Brian Thomas is in the mix here, to pair with Devontae Adams. I don't know. Brock Bowers, could that be a play here still on the board? Michael Mayer was obviously the second round last year, played well. I don't know that you need that to go that route at tight end. Or, we could start again. We could go back to the tackle well. We could go back and sit there and say that J.C. Latham is a mountain of a man as a right tackle. Oh boy. A lot of conversations going on in the draft room right now, Buck.
A lot of conversations. You're sitting with that high back chair trying to make a decision that, to plot out the future of the Raiders. Remember, Antonio Pierce is your head coach. How are you going to make Antonio Pierce happy? He's looking you right in the face. What are we doing? So, Red Lewis, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Let's do this. Let's say that the Las Vegas Raiders at pick number 13 choose Amarius Mims, the gargantuan right tackle out of Georgia. who is raw as they come, but, like Colton Miller before him, big frame, huge
Mhm.
potential, maybe needed a little bit of refinement, got that, became one of the better left tackles. Now we can kind of chart a similar path with Amarius Mims. And that's our choice here at 13, with the caveat that we are going to either trade back up into the end of the first round or the top of the second to secure Michael Penix, if he is still on the board, to be our franchise quarterback down the road if it does come to that. So how about that for a scenario?
I mean, it's a nice scenario. It's a nice scenario. We don't have we're going to try and find a quarterback late in the first round, but we can get a big physical guy that kind of fits the personality of the coach and what the coach wants to do, which is run the football, beat people up, kind of play bully ball in a division that has become increasingly more competitive, with the Chargers getting Jim Harbaugh and what the moves they're making, the Kansas City Chiefs being defending world champions, looking to pull off a three. Yeah, this is a move that certainly is done to counterbalance some of the things that have been done within the division.
And look, full disclosure, like JC Latham, could certainly be the pick. Tyler Guyton could certainly be the pick. A Troy Fautanu from Washington could be the pick. I feel like if you're going offensive lineman and tackle, I feel like from 4 to 8, you could have any number of combinations in terms of how teams see those guys. And I'm sure there's a lot of them that are a little bit interchanged there. So I chose Mims. I chose frame and potential over, maybe a more refined production of a guy like Latham, who's seen a little bit more collegiate action, or a guy like Fautanu, who's done the same. But so Marius Mims, the choice there. But I could see any one of those offensive linemen going there at number 13, if that is the choice. All right. So quick recap. Caleb Williams goes to the Bears. J.J. McCarthy to the Commanders at 2. We got Drake May to the Patriots at 3. Jaden Daniels as the Vikings trade up to number 4. Vikings take Jaden Daniels at 4. Chargers stick and pick Joe Alt at number 5. The Giants take Marvin Harrison, first wideout. Titans go with Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. Falcons take Dallas Turner, our first defensive player, at number 8. Bears go Roma Dunze to pair with Caleb Williams at 9. Jets stick and pick with Talisa Fuaga out of Oregon State, the big tackle. Cardinals trade back out of that number 4 spot, still get one of the top-tier wide receivers in Malik Neighbors at number 11. The Broncos take the 5th quarterback off the board. It's Bo Nix out of Oregon at number 12. And we both gave a couple of scenarios for the Raiders. Bucky went with the cornerback, and you said Quinion Mitchell, right? Yeah. Q with
Quinion
the
Mitchell
trades,
is the pick.
And then I ended up with my Raiders scenario going with the Amarius Mims, the tackle out of Georgia. Again, traits, size, strength, and again, just a ton of potential out there. But there you go. Couple of scenarios there, and we'll keep running through these scenarios as we kind of get closer to the draft and as we come back with you next week for another episode. But that's an interesting way to see it play out, because I think, Bucky, one of those decision points is going to be, all right, are the Chargers going to hold the Vikings to a ransom, or are the Cardinals going to make them pay out of the nose to get to 4? Does the player that's available actually change the calculus of how much they want to ask for in return for that pick? Because if it's Daniels sitting there, you're like, hey, this guy could have gone number 2. You're getting him at 4. You're going to, for us to get out of here, you have to give us more. You wonder how that's all going to play out. Plus, the Chargers could certainly be that trade spot. So who knows, man? We got about 30 days to figure this thing out.
I mean, that's the beauty of doing the exercise. And that's why when we talk about mock drafts, all it takes is one unexpected pick to change the way the dominoes fall on the rest of the board. We'll see if someone goes off the grid and surprises us with a pick on draft day. But the good thing is we have more than 20 days to continue to talk about it as we get ready for the draft in Detroit.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. For Bucky Brooks, I am Rhett Lewis, and major thanks to all of our friends at Silver and Black Productions, and to all of you, Raider Nation, for continuing to give us a listen here as we've been on this journey down the path to the draft and the path to Detroit. Can't wait to see everyone there, but we've got a few more episodes for you until we get there to keep you company. And until next time, have a good one, everybody.